I'm good.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Beverly School Committee's Curriculum Instruction and Student Life meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 12th, 2023, and we are meeting in a remote model today using a remote meeting application, allowing for remote participation and for public access to the open portions of our meeting. We are being recorded on by the platform. On June 16th, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and again on July 16th, 2022, he extended the provisions to, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023. Now, our current governor and legislature extended further 2 years until March 31st, 2025. These acts specifically suspend the need for a quorum and chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow safe public access. As a note, the Beverly's prior approval for remote participation, although through that permission, a chair and a quorum will need to be physically present when this act and its extension expires. Okay, so joining us today are members of the school committee and various members of district administration and leadership teams. We will conduct a full roll call attendance in a moment for the record, since the meeting application sometimes does not display all participants. Please remember that any audio video you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record. As such, please use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. I would now like to ask President Abel to conduct a roll call to ensure you're able to both hear me and that we are able to hear you this evening.
Sure thing. Let's start with our remote participants just to make sure that the fixes we put in place are sticky. We have our citizen representative, Allison Driscoll.
Here.
Great. And Lorigan Sudak.
Here.
Great, we can hear you. And our student representative, Zena Ba.
Here.
We are also joined online by Principal Amy Blanchard.
Here.
And the other participants in the remote platform are actually here in person, so we'll go around. We have Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Our recording secretary, Mayor Michael P. Cahill. Just kidding, Liz Wilson. We have our superintendent, Dr. Sue Chorochek.
Here.
Our assistant superintendent, Dr. Dorothy Flaherty.
Here.
School committee person, Karen Robinson.
Here.
I'm Rachel Abel. And we are joined in the room by Mr. Casey, Ms. Oliver, Ms. Oxford. Oh, Jaden Avarello, our student representative, is here. You should come up to the table if you'd like. If you don't have to, but if you'd like. And Principal Betty Taylor is in the room. Thank you.
I would like to ask Dr. Flaherty to lead us in the pledge this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll now turn the meeting over to Dr. Flaherty.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I hope everybody's enjoying the beautiful weather that we've had the last few days. We do have an important agenda this evening, and originally we had moved the focus topics up in our normal agenda, but with only 2 students and knowing that they probably have homework to do, I'd like to ask permission to be able to move them back up into their regular order. Is that okay? Then we will hear from our high school Director of Humanities with our new realigned curriculum for the high school with resources. We will have an update on our pilot at BMS with some recommendations. Both of those will require a vote of the committee, which will move forward as a recommendation to the full school committee at their, not tonight's meeting, but the next meeting for the whole school committee's approval. And then I have one last vote that we need to do. We did last year. This will become an annual vote around classifying BMS as an elementary school versus a secondary school, and that's the difference for the number of hours that they need to do. And we have that option. We just have to declare it on an annual basis. So I'm going to ask Jaden if he would share his update with us first.
So, in just a few short days, around 33 kids will be traveling to Puerto Rico on Monday for April vacation. The students, along with 6 teachers, chaperones, will be going to San Juan in Puerto Rico to participate in many events like ziplining, snorkeling. We're going to go kayaking through bioluminescent bay and a lot more. This is the first time, and I think this is just about the first time that a class like around this big goes to Puerto Rico, this far away. Along with that, we have a project to do, so we compare like stuff in the Beverly area to like the cultures in Puerto Rico.
Super
And I
excited.
wish you all the safety but all the fun that you can. And we've got lots of trips going out for middle school and high school, and we wish everybody safe travels and wonderful experiences. And I know our thoughts, Kate Trombley is not with us this evening because she is at Nature's Classroom with half of our 6th graders that are having their experience this week. And we hear that everything is going super well, so that's great. Thank you. Zainab, would you like to give your update next?
So this week, grade 6 sent 147 students and 11 staff to Nature's Classroom. This was our first overnight trip in BMS since 2019. Students are currently participating in stuff like shark dissections, ASL classes, and problem-solving tasks, and spa options, which they are very lucky for. They have hiked, played gaga ball, shot hoops, and have ended their night with a quiet sing. We hear that the food has been a highlight for many kids. Tonight, as we speak, 147 students gather in a pavilion for a sing-along.
Thank you. I heard about the spa options. I kind of wanted to go check that out. Thank you very much for the updates. I don't believe we have any other student reps with us right now. So we will move to our next item on the agenda, which we will, we have to do the approval of the minutes from the March 8th meeting.
Sure, I reviewed the minutes from our March 8th CISL meeting, and I would like to make a motion that we approve those meeting records.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Abel, would you call a roll?
Sure. For our voting members, we have Zanaba.
Yes.
Jaden, did he leave already?
He did.
He did, okay. Absent. Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson? Yes. Ms. Abel, yes. Ms. Sudak?
Yes.
And Ms. Driscoll?
Abstain?
Abstain. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with 2 abstentions. It passes.
Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Casey so he can share all of the exciting work that our English department teachers and department have been doing to realign our curriculum for Beverly High School and to talk about some new resources that they are requesting. And I'll move your slides for you.
Thank you, Dr. Flaherty. Good evening. I'd like to just start my presentation with a quote, and I'll read it. It says, "The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they aren't true, but they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. When we reject the single story, when we realize that there is never a single story about any place, we regain a kind of paradise." This quote comes from a TED Talk by Chimamanda Adichie, and it's one of the more powerful talks that I've seen. And in it, she is speaking about her own experiences as a Nigerian woman who comes to America, and in particular, her interactions with her college roommate, and how her roommate has one single story about Africa as a impoverished place. And basically what she's saying is that when we have only a single story of any place or culture or person, we risk critical misunderstanding. And that's the whole idea behind the English department, specifically at Beverly High School, looking to diversify the text that they're using so that we don't fall into the same trap of having just a single story about individuals, cultures, and experiences. Just to show some statistics, since 2018, Beverly High School's minority populations have increased from 18.3% to 5% higher, 23.3%, and continue to grow. I also want to point out that this statistic does not include students with disabilities, students who identify as part of the LGBT plus community, students who identify with other unique traits, cultures, religions, and experiences. So one of the ways that we can, again, combat the single story and to bring more of our student population into or bring their identities into the curriculum is to diversify our texts. And when we diversify our texts and bring in more cultures and experiences, we look to call that multicultural literature. These are just some highlights of what multicultural literature can do in a school and in a curriculum. I'd just like to point out a couple of things. Stories portraying cultural diversity can foster the belief that identity traits are not a barrier, but rather a contribution to the beauty of our multicultural world. And when students vicariously experience the feelings and emotions of others through literature, they are encouraged to look critically at the world and gain a greater understanding of the global community.
Not to interrupt, I just wanted to let committee members know, you will be receiving a copy of this PowerPoint presentation at 7:30. We didn't want to send it out early tonight because we wanted to give the presenters the chance to share the information with you first.
So in creating a more multicultural, diverse set of texts, the Beverly High School's English department had a series of goals over the last year and a half. It began with my predecessor, Ms. Mom, and then I took over in October with the same goals. So one was to create a 9 through 12 curriculum that builds an understanding of diverse cultures and experiences. We also wanted to evaluate the current curriculum with a focus on retaining texts that are relevant and that also require grit and rigor. The department wanted to pair a variety of readings with core texts such as short stories, nonfiction articles, poems, excerpts, and videos. When possible, we wanted to pair texts and excerpts with the chronology of students' grade level history course. For instance, when they're reading a certain text in grade 10, we wanted to make sure that at times that was paired with grade 10 US 2's history curriculum and the content that they discussed there. And also, the English department wanted to develop a critical lens and essential questions for each grade level to encourage both horizontal and vertical alignment. This is one of the more important slides for me because I wanted to point out the teachers that were responsible for piloting and discussing the new texts and creating the curriculum containing both the new texts and the previous texts. And there was representation for each grade level, but they are really the ones behind the curriculum that you're going to see today. Grade 9 is Mary Biggis and Elizabeth Lincoln. Grade 10 is Stephanie Schreier. Grade 11, Amanda Ferrari and Anthony Claricuzio. And grade 12 was Thomas Guzio. So the result of the Diversifying Text Committee, which was the group that I had just mentioned, was in addition to retaining the texts that the committee felt were relevant and rigorous, they ended up adding 14 new texts through grade levels 9 through 12, some of them core, some of them will be either teacher or student choice. But all of them are going to cover a wide range of diverse characters and cultures related to gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, and people with disabilities that will better represent Beverly High School's school community. And then just want to highlight
show the whole link?
Yeah, the whole link, which is right here. I'll go back one. And this is a more comprehensive look at the curriculum itself for each grade level. And of course, each grade level will start with a critical lens and essential questions. And then as you scroll down on the left side would be each of the texts that are core, and then it's noted when each of the texts would be a choice. So for instance, grade 9 maintained the Odyssey and Romeo and Juliet, which they're currently reading. And then in the new Finding Your Own Voice category, added The Poet X as a core text for all ninth grade students to read. And then there's the choice. And again, I want to emphasize that the choice could be either teacher choice, or in some cases, teachers will have the ability to make it student choice with literary circles. So for instance, again, Finding Your Own Voice would have the Poet X as a core, with the choice of All American Boys, Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, and Speak. And then if we I should highlight on the right side of this document would be the paired texts that go along with each of the either core or choice texts on the left side, ranging from poems to short stories, nonfiction texts, and we will try to, when possible, pair the nonfiction text with the chronology of the history class for the same grade. And then if we continue to scroll down for grade 10, we see similar, again, Shakespeare texts which have been taught in years past. And then we come down to coming of age, with the core text being The Nickel Boys, and then a choice between I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings and To Kill a Mockingbird. Grade 11, in the Diversifying Text Committee, I will say, has been very ambitious with the texts that they've chosen in diversifying the curriculum. We can see that they do teach Frankenstein as a core text, as well as In the Time of Butterflies and Like Water for Chocolate. They also have a choice, either teacher or student, Raisin in the Sun, Fences, and A Doll's House. They've gotten great reviews from students of the graphic novel American Born Chinese, and then a choice of Just Mercy, Purple Hibiscus, Things Fall Apart, and A Thousand Splendid Suns. Finally, as we come down to 12th grade, and with the lens being the power of education, or the focus being the power of education, excuse me, we have the core of Gatsby, A Brave New World, or 1984. The new text would be Educated and The Girl with the Louding Voice. Would then have a choice, Death of a Salesman, Kite Runner, The Life of Pi. And I will say that the 12th grade curriculum looks a little shorter because our 12th graders leave in April. And then just to point out the alignment, as I spoke about. When possible, our English department and history department will align their content and curriculum. One of the main goals will be to have the history department and the English department have more discussions as it relates to the text that they're using. For instance, in English 10, they'll be reading The Nickel Boys as a core book. This will be read in the spring as it aligns with US 2's discussion of the civil rights movement. Additionally, grade 11 will have a choice book of Things Fall Apart, which can also be read in the spring with its alignment of imperialism during grade 11's World History Unit.
Do you want to talk a minute about how, when it is a core that we're trying to align, we'll make sure that all students have a book so that they can,
Yes.
don't have to
So,
share?
so with our core text, one of our main goals was to ensure that every student would have the ability to have a book that they could take home. So with core books, we were looking at the number of students, or the average, or the high average of number of students that would come into each grade level for BHS would be around 360. When we looked at the books that would be a choice, we were thinking about dividing that in half to have 180 available. We'd really like the expectations at Beverly High School to be raised, that students would have not only the ability, but the expectation to take a book home and read at home. And we can only do that with the number of books that we would have to order. Just to go over some statistics of student statistics. So each student that was part of a teacher's pilot series was given a survey. This on the top left is on a scale of 1 to 5. How much did you enjoy this text? And I wish they were all 5s, but it is reading, so I was pretty pleased with the numbers of
Above
3s,
is pretty good.
3s, 4s, and 5s that were the majority of students that enjoyed the text that they were given. Where it says what did you enjoy, the highest percentages were character development, different perspectives on the world, and engaging plot, which were also some nice selections from our students. And again, the bottom one is how likely would you be to recommend this book to a friend. And again, we can see the majority of students were in the 3 and 4 and 5 range. And then in the survey, it also had a prompt, which was, did you find the characters relatable? And when I was going through the survey, you know, we can look at the numbers that the students picked, and yeah, they all enjoyed the book. Yeah, we gave it a 4. But this was really what I felt was the best indicator of how the students felt about the book, or the books in general. And as we can see, for a variety of reasons, the students felt that the characters were relatable, whether it was because a student was an immigrant and related to the story of the immigrant child that was in the book as the protagonist, or one student was a girl that said she was just trying to navigate high school, and the protagonist in the novel, you know, made her gave her some identity, and one student wrote how the protagonist in one novel spoke exactly how she spoke and how her mom spoke at home. And I think this was the best evidence that I could produce as far as why it's important that we diversify the texts at Beverly High School.
And the estimated cost right now is
Just over 55,000.
We will also put into join a audio library where we will be able to have access to audiobooks so that we can do UDL if we have students that need to have an audio version of the text that we're buying. So the next thing that we need is questions and then ultimately a motion to approve.
Okay. I just wanted to reiterate something that Mr. Casey said that I think is really important for students to have a physical text to be able to take home with them. I think it was a challenge this year for students to finish their formative homework without actually having the text to reference.
You were a guiding force in that decision because you said that at a previous meeting.
I can say how many trips we've made to bookstores. And not everyone has that luxury. But I think that is like an absolutely essential to make sure that all students have access to the texts. So thank you.
Thank you for all this work. I think that's a lot on the English department. They did a great job.
It really was the teachers that did the most work.
Yes. So this is my question. So we all know that the classics we can keep forever. They're often available in the public domain, free of use. You have copies of everything that are like covers falling off, but you're still using them.
Yes.
So how often do you think we'll need to replace, not like get new book? Because I like the idea of there'll be a new book that replaces Poet X in a few years. And is that going to, are we going to be able to maintain the cost of all that? Because those, they don't stick around. We always want to refresh those.
Right. And I will say with the text that we already have, when we were ordering texts, I evaluated all of the texts that we did already have. So for instance, the text that we were keeping in the order, we only put the order in to reach that number that we talked about, which was either 360 or 180. So for instance, if we had 100 and I'm going to do some poor math here, so I'm going to make it an easy number for me. If we had 120 copies of a text that were viable copies or good copies, we only ordered 60 to meet that 180 number. The choice of books certainly will keep books around longer. So for instance, if there's 4 choices, either teacher or student choices, they can be rotated. If a teacher has 60 students, for example, and there's 180 books, they can take 60 books and the students would take them home. If that teacher is the only teacher that taught that book that semester, say, that would mean 120 didn't go, so we could keep the rotation going that way. I would say that you're right. If we're talking about students taking books home, there will be more wear and tear than usual. I think that's why we talked about the 360 number as being high. Ms. Taylor.
This is the same situation with the texts we have right now. That would switch to the high school's budget for the English department, and we would order new paperbacks. So, for example, we've done Great Gatsby for many years, so we're always ordering some more Great Gatsbys because, like you said, some get worn and some get lost. So, I don't expect a massive loss of 180 So the school's budget can replace some of those texts.
I think I understand what you're asking as far as when we might switch things out. Remember, we've developed a curriculum review cycle. So it would be on an every this took almost 2 years to finish. So our next time around, then they would come up, hopefully we're going to be everybody into that regular 5-year cycle at that point. And then we could review and change out books at that time. It wouldn't be something that would be happening on an annual basis. And because there are so many, the teachers could change it up so that they are changing, so they're not, if they're comfortable or if they want to try a different book, we would have those ready for them. So as Mr. Casey said, that would extend the life of the book as well.
And so in addition to the review, we're working in it as a budget cycle as well. So we have them set up so that we're not reviewing everything at one time, so we can have a cost line in the budget that would be curriculum review cycle expenditures, and that's how we would maintain it for whatever topic. So some we're not going to need to replace as often as others, but you're right, novels or pieces of that certainly would fall into that.
Thank you.
I don't see any hands online. I'm just looking for our remote participants if there's any questions. So, Dr. Flaherty, it sounded like you were looking for a motion to approve the revised Beverly High School grade 9 through 12 ELA curriculum with the recommended resources that we've seen presented this evening for the 23-24 school year.
Beginning in
23-24. I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Zabel, could you call a roll for us?
Sure. I'm sorry, we're going to start with the online again. We have Zanab Ba.
Yes.
Okay. And I'll do our citizen representatives, Lorigan Sudak
Yes.
and Allison Driscoll.
Yes.
In the room, Dr. Jeffrey Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Karen Robinson,
Yes.
and Ms. Rachel Abel, yes.
And this will come you'll recommend it not tonight's meeting, but next meeting to the full school committee. And I just wanted to take 1 second to thank the teachers that worked so hard on this for 2 years, and also for Mr. Casey. It's not easy to walk in on your first year of leadership and really pulled something together that I think is going to bode very well for Beverly High School.
I just have a
Mrs.
question.
Mr. Silva?
Could you speak to how the selection of books compares to, and maybe there's not a comparison, to what's being offered in the surrounding communities?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't,
Yeah,
do you want
that's
to-
fine.
Yeah. So part of the development of the new curriculum, as far as the texts are concerned, have also been aligning skills, and that's something I didn't present today. However, part of my job now is aligning skills both horizontally and vertically, not just in the English department, but also co-aligning with the history department, which has been going very, very well. One way I've been doing that is by looking at curriculum maps from other communities, and some are behind what we've presented today, and some are aligned with what we've presented today. And many of the texts that we've presented are being read throughout the communities around us, and some of the more progressive communities have done this over the last year or two, I would say. But it would fall right in line with what I've been seeing as far as the curriculum maps and the curriculum of other communities.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we're going to move in to share the information about the BMS pilot. And I would like to thank Mrs. Oliver, the principal, and Ms. Lauren Oxford, the humanities literacy coach here at the middle school. Lauren actually presented this information to a leadership committee, which you'll see the makeup of in a moment. And I am going to present some of that information along with what took place to bring forward to you for decision-making tonight. You'll see that this work was started by, again, this has been almost a 2-year process. Erica Pasquarelli and Kate Twombly started this in the last school year. Lauren came on board in July and has carried it forward for this year. On the right, you'll see that pilot educators, those were the teachers that piloted both wit and wisdom, and for 5th grade into reading, and for 6th through 8th, the product was called Into Literature. They're both from HMH publishers, but they are different products. And you'll see that there was representatives from each grade level. This is the leadership committee that will make that heard the feedback and information about the pilot, and then made decisions that we will be bringing forward to you later this evening. But you'll see that it was made up of multiple members of Beverly Middle School admin team. We also had Mr. Casey for that vertical alignment with the high school, and both Mr. Casey and Dr. Thomas have been doing some work to have some stronger vertical alignment between grades 7 through 12. It also contained our director of ELE and Mrs. Spolansky, our director of people personnel, Dr. Morgan, director of opportunity access and equity, and Dr. Trochek and myself. You've seen this slide, you've heard this before, but I think it's really important to kind of frame our thinking as we move forward, and this is going to be true for anything we bring forward for support, that there are no unicorns. There isn't a perfect program out there that meets every single item. If there were, they would have the market on, everybody would buy them, but there are choices, and so we looked for what we call strong horses, which have many strong components that we're looking for, but we know that we may also need to do some work and some tweaking of the program in order to make it meet our needs here in Beverly. We had non-negotiables for the pilot, which you heard were the same when we were looking at our elementary programs. Basically that it needed to be meeting expectations on Curate, which is the state's kind of review process that is made up of a board of teachers, or on Ed Reports, which is a national review process. Needed to be aligned to the Massachusetts framework. We believe strongly in PBL, so we wanted to find a product that allowed us to have some flexibility to still incorporate PBL into our work, that it standardized our writing process and embedded it in the work we were doing, that the pacing of the program met the schedule for the school, which you'll hear a little bit about, did raise some problems in the feedback for our upper grades in 7th and 8th grade. That there are core experiences by grade level so that we can have grade level or cross-team work or interdisciplinary work that is going on. That it's a structured component of teaching to bring that consistency across the teams. We are looking for that vertical alignment or a vertical flow from elementary through middle into high school, and that we have been committed to a knowledge-based curriculum as a district. We thought it would be important to just review for you when we start talking about these two things, that we have a clear understanding of what is meant by a knowledge-based curriculum versus a skills-based curriculum. And so here you'll see that a knowledge-based curriculum means that it is immersive learning around a certain topic. Many times the topics are around science and social studies. Skills are embedded and authentically related to the content. They're not taught as separate items. It provides equal background knowledge for all learners to access rigorous topics and texts. Reading and writing are authentically connected to the work. It often incorporates science and social studies for content topics. Research indicates it increases achievement outcomes for all populations and supports our desire to strengthen PBL opportunities. A skills-based program, which has been very traditional in the past and what we have followed, is explicit teaching around reading skills and concepts, such as finding the main idea, character development, but isolated. The skills are then applied with short stories or excerpts of texts. Topics may be random or unrelated. The books and texts are chosen to relate the skill, not necessarily the topic. New skills are introduced weekly or frequently, and the skills are often isolated and not interrelated to the content areas that are being discussed. This, we have two quotes, and these both came out in a very recent, last week actually, Forbes article written by Natalie Wexler, who is a renowned expert on knowledge-based curriculum, so it will show her bias. But in the article, it talked about the fact that a standards-based approach is the focus on comprehension of skills and strategies, like finding the main idea or text and making inferences. Often there is a skill set of the week, which the teacher demonstrates using a book chosen not for its topic, but for how well it lends itself to demonstrating the skill. Then students practice the skill on other books, fiction or nonfiction, and random topics. They have been determined, that have been determined to match their individual reading levels. So this is where you have different students being exposed to different rigor within the books. The goal is not for children to acquire any substantive knowledge, but rather to master the skill that has been theoretically enabled them to understand the complex texts they are expected to be able to read in the future. And within that same article, this is hot off the press, it was a new research study, and one of the things that jumped out to all of us is in the last line of this quote. And it looked at 2,000 students that had been exposed to a content-rich, knowledge-based curriculum for at least 4 years, and we knew that this would be a progression of time in order to see the benefit. But for students that had been exposed from kindergarten through 4th grade, their reading comprehension test mirrored, not only did they close gaps, but the students from low-income families made such dramatic gains that their performance on state tests equaled that of children from higher income families. And when we were looking at the benefits of a knowledge-based curriculum, closing the gaps between our aggregate students and our subgroup students, including low-income and some of our ELL students and special ed, this was an area that was important for us. Because basically what the knowledge-based curriculum does is it creates more hooks for students to hang the knowledge on, and so that they can progress. And so they're closing those gaps as they move up through the grades. This just reviews the timeline. The phase 1 started back in February, March of 2022 when teachers and the administrative team worked on a vision and reviewing the non-negotiables. They looked at different programs that were out there. This summer, they reported the findings, and we selected 2 programs to pilot, which began this past September. And just last week, the recommendations were made to our administrative leadership team, and we're bringing the recommendations for adoption to CISL this evening. This is important to keep in mind when you think about some of the information we're going to share with you, because we do have a different schedule for grades 5 and 6 and for grades 7 and 8. So grades 5 and 6 have a 90 to 120 minute humanities block because they teach both ELA and social studies, and they meet daily. Our 7th and 8th grade have classes that range from 48 to 65 minutes, and they see their classes 4 times a week, but it's ELA subject specific. For the program overviews, one of the things that we had to take into account when we were looking at programs to both pilot and in our recommendations to bring forward is looking at the grade spans that are available for middle school ELA curriculum. The majority of high-quality instructional materials designed for middle schools do not span grades 5 through 8. And they tend to be just 6 through 8 or a K through 8 progression. 5th grade is most commonly looped or connected with the elementary level, and they come in grade span from K to 5, and then the middle school would be grades 6 to 8. Wit and Wisdom was uniquely designed because it was one of the programs that we found that had a progression from grades K through 8. So we could have that vertical alignment across all of our grades, and thus it also provided us the most flexibility in grade spans because it allowed us to have the same exposure through all 8 grades. As you saw, the non-negotiable was that it was rated as meeting expectations on Curate and Ed Reports. Wit and Wisdom did both, as did the the HMH, the Into Reading and Into Literature. Wit and Wisdom is a knowledge-based curriculum. It is an equal playing field because there is whole group instruction and everybody's reading access to the same novels with support. It also is built around and supports the science of reading, which is the approach that we're taking at the elementary school level. It is novel-based, so students are exposed to rich, challenging, and engaging core text, and there is a large volume of supplemental reading for students and teachers to choose from. There are a lot of student discourse and protocols where students are the ones that are creating the knowledge and doing the thinking. So just as examples, you may hear, if you have elementary students, you've heard these already, Notice and Wonder. This is really how they start all of their work, and students go through and talk about what they notice in the books, or even just looking at a piece of artwork, and then what do they wonder, which connects them into the learning that they're going to do. Socratic Seminar, where the students are creating questions and doing the talking, and the teacher really becomes a facilitator. And it builds in writing and organizers. And I can tell you, I was amazed as everybody was in the elementary was getting ready to do MCAS. The kids were able to recreate the organizers on their own because they can't take those organizers into the test, but they know the acronym, so they were able to create the organizer to use when the graphic organizer isn't available for them. There are 4 modules, and each module takes between 8 to 12 weeks. You'll see the time, and again, remember the schedules. It did fit with the elementary level, but it did create a problem with being able to cover all of the material in 7th and 8th grade because the demands of the program are longer than what our schedule currently entails. As we said, this was for grade 5 only, Into Reading, and it is a very different there are a lot of similarities, but it is a different program than the 6 through 8. And so it did also meet, curate for meeting expectations as well as on Ed Reports. It's a basal anthology, which means it was a large workbook, and it was based on text excerpts. They did not read a complete novel. There are novels that are available in their lending library as well, but more as an enrichment or as an add-on, not part of the core curriculum. And it is separate from grades 6 to 8, and so this would create an additional transition for our students that would go into 3 programs, the K to 4, grade 5, 6 to 8, and then the high school. It's a skills-focused program with a new set of skills for each story, and it's built around 90 to 120-minute lessons, which does fit the 5th grade schedule. There are 12 units and 5 lessons. Each module is aligned to an essential question or a theme, and there's a culminating writing task at the end of each of the units. There is a very nice digital platform that was very user-friendly for both teachers and for students, and it allowed them to have complete access to the textbooks digitally. Grades 6 through 8 also met on Curate as well as Ed Reports meeting expectations. Very similar, grades 6 through 8 is a basal anthology based on short stories and excerpts, and there are optional longer texts. It is skills-based, but this is built around a 50-minute lesson, not the longer lesson that you saw at the elementary level. Similar, it is aligned through essential questions and theme, and there's a culminating writing task. And it did have a digital component that was very user-friendly and contained everything kind of in one location for teachers. So feedback. The pros and cons, this is feedback that Ms. Oxford got through survey and from one-on-one meetings with teachers, and then she pooled all of the comments into 2 lists for us. So pros for Wit and Wisdom that came back were that there are strong routines established, there's a common language, they were engaging novels, it was challenging for many of the students. There is a section that goes along to help support EL students called Prologue. Wit and Wisdom, as you saw at the elementary level, is very strong with visual art study along with what is happening in the classroom. There's varying assessments. The writing was connected and embedded. There was opportunity still for small group work, and there was a predictable flow of the lessons. The cons that came across were that the teachers felt that it was teacher-directed, that there was a schedule that impacted the completion. That was the 7th and 8th grade. It does not meet with the expectation of the program and what we have for a schedule. It was hard to manage the materials. It was not all put together in a user-friendly format. So it does not have as much technology-driven pieces to it. It's much more hands-on. There was a feeling that there was a lack of diversity in the unit. And remember, this was just a pilot. It didn't look at the whole year, but there was a lack of diversity in the unit that they piloted. There was a need to create scaffolds for special populations. Teachers had to create a lot of the resources. There was a lack of wiggle room. They felt it was too rigorous, and that the modules were much longer. Teacher feedback for into reading and into literature, which this was the preferred program by teachers at 5th grade as well as at the 6th through 8th level. The pros were that there were many options to scaffold and differentiate for students. The workbook was very colorful and it was visually engaging. It was engaging for students. They followed similar and familiar structures. The rigor reached the middle. Diverse representation. It was very user-friendly. There was shorter modules and units. It fit their schedule better. The analysis in the workbook was helpful, and that there were multiple text options. The cons were that the assessments did not match well with the instruction, that there were shorter texts and a lack of novel integration. There was too much reliance on annotation. It was more surface level instruction. They were covering many skills and topics very quickly, a lack of background in some scenarios, informational text heavy, assessments had to be edited, and there was a large workbook which was overwhelming for some. The middle school also surveyed students to get their input back, and they looked into 4 areas. The rigor, was it challenging? Did they like the literature? Discourse, for them, it meant how involved were they in the discussions? And did it help them to understand what they were trying to learn? And you'll see from these, across the board in each of the 4 categories, the charts look very similar for Wit and Wisdom and for interreading and interliterature. This was thinking about the literature in the program. Did they like the books? Similar to the high school, you're going to have, and we're hoping to develop that love of reading, but by the time some students get to middle school, or especially if they're struggling readers, they may not enjoy reading. But we were, for the most part, the majority were in that middle to upper categories. Would you recommend the books to read to a friend or a peer? You'll see it was very similar for both books, both programs. And then last, did it help you to understand the topic that you were trying to learn? And again, very similar results for both. So our next steps, obviously the direct next steps is to answer any questions you have. But once I finish with this piece, I'll let you know what our recommendations are. So the leadership team met and unanimously agreed that the HMH interreading and interliterature do not support the district's vision of a knowledge-based curriculum. Moreover, it creates that 4th curriculum transition that I talked about, K to 12. So you'll have one program for K to 4, a separate program for grade 5, another program for grade 6 to 8, and then the high school would be 9 through 12. We are recommending that grade 5 adopt Wit and Wisdom so that we can continue to meet the learning needs of our 4th graders who have been learning through this program for an entire year, and so they would come to the middle school already knowing much of the language and the routines that are in there. But we also did listen, and we thought that there was some good feedback to consider. And because we needed to immediately meet the needs of our fifth grade, we are also recommending that we slow our roll a little bit for grades 6 through 8, and to not take Wit and Wisdom off the table. It still remains a consideration as a strong match for us. But we also want to look to see if there are other knowledge-based curriculums and resources, to perhaps go back to one that we looked at that was a strong contender in the last round, but did not want to be part of a multi-program pilot, so they kind of withdrew themselves. And there has been a new program that has come online since this work started, and so we're going to look at that program as well. But whatever we bring forward to pilot will be a knowledge-based curriculum in grades 6 through 8, but trying to find something that will better match our schedule and our structure here at the middle school. And we would do that pilot next year, so we would extend the pilot for grades 6 through 8 with a full adoption planned for the 2024-2025 school year. And this final slide just was to show you, and there is a link in here when you get your slides tonight, that shows you that Wit and Wisdom is aligned to the Massachusetts frameworks. And it's a very lengthy document. If you want to go in and read it, you have a link to go in and see it. But this is just to show you the alignment that is there. And between Mrs. Oliver, Ms. Oxford, and myself, do you have any questions before we give you our motion or a recommended motion?
I have a question. So it sounds like there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the teacher's part. Will they be given opportunity release time or opportunities for professional development
Yes,
in order
absolutely.
to?
That's our number one priority. We also received a grant for high-quality implementation materials. We actually will be working with a representative from Rivet Education. She's coming on site to do a whole learning analysis to help us roll professional development out the right way. One of the things from the feedback we realized is that we still have to do some professional development building around what a knowledge-based curriculum is at the middle school. I think that our commitment to professional development is one of the reasons that we've had a smooth rollout at the elementary. And we would follow either a similar, we did some summer work with them last year and paid them. We would have that same commitment. And where this is a smaller group, we could also find time to do release time and get them coverage if it needed to happen during the actual school year. But what we also keep saying, because this is a very different, you've heard us talk about this, it's a different philosophy of approach. And so it is longer because you go more in depth. It's not surface work. And so it is a different approach to teaching and learning for both. And it's a 3-year rollout. We have said this over and over at the elementary level. We will also say that to all of our middle school teachers as well. This is not something that we expect we're going to drop on you on September 1st and think that you're going to master this immediately. This is a 3-year process in order to build knowledge. We've seen it change over the year at elementary level as well. There were a lot of tears back in September and October, and people that are some of our best teachers that were not feeling competent because this is new learning, right? So they're on their edges of learning as well, which is an exciting place to be and where we've asked them to go and take risks. And as they got through each of the modules, they became more confident, and they're doing some amazing stuff right now.
Thank you.
I was looking online to see if there were any questions from our online participants. Not seeing any hands. I have my hand. I think something that I really appreciate when I'm hearing is the recognition that transitions are hard for our students, going from the elementary up to the larger middle school, and then even well, it's actually not larger population-wise, but it's more complicated at the high school. And I think recognizing the transitions and trying to meet our fifth graders or incoming fourth graders in fifth grade with that decision and continuing to look for the best or a better horse, seems like a really reasonable approach. So I appreciate the thought that went into that recommendation.
Thank you. So we'll see that there is a requested motion, and again, this would be the leadership team requests approval to implement Wit and Wisdom for grade 5 and to extend the ELA curriculum pilot for grades 6, 7, and 8 into the 23-24 school year. Did you want to say something, Dr. Trocek? I think I saw the hand.
No, I was just, I just wanted to kind of recognize in particular the work that Lauren has done with the teachers and the work that the teachers did. You know, it's a very difficult process to ask teachers to pilot new materials in their classroom, and they all, you know, and there were some teachers who very willingly did that. So I just wanted to recognize and acknowledge the work that they did, and in particular, and Mrs. Oliver, because I can't leave her out, because she was masterful and has had a lot of visits in her office in the last few weeks as we're making this difficult decision. But it was really a lot of work, and I kind of wanted to mirror what Ms. Abel said. I think it was a brave decision to say, we know the right program for 5th grade. We still would like time to explore 6, 7, and 8. This is a big decision that we make. We make this decision probably once every 15 years when you're talking about the scope of a reading program. And so I just really wanted to acknowledge that it was a brave decision to slow down. I think sometimes we forget to do that in education and we move quickly. And I wanted to also assure everyone that the financial resources, the reason we were able to do that is because our ESSER funds last through September 30th of 2024. So we will still be able to support the curriculum purchase through our ESSER funding, as well as through the HQIM grant that we got. So just to kind of throw it, because you didn't mention a number, but I think it's
This is just under 30,000 for the 5th grade.
for the 5th grade.
And just to, I was going to say after the vote, to thank the teachers that put in that time and the effort to do the pilot. I know it's frustrating sometimes because it didn't necessarily turn out the way that they had hoped. When we started this work, though, we were pretty clear that we were committed to a knowledge-based curriculum, and it would have to be some compelling evidence as to why we would change in a different direction. So I know that also brings some apprehension when you're changing the teaching model. So I appreciated your question around professional development, and just want to reiterate the fact that we're here to support them, and we just want them to take risks and to try new things, and we know not everything is going to work, and that's okay. That's where we want them to be.
We do have a question from Lorgan Sudik.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to clarify, so the ESSER money is going through to September 24, and that would include whatever is decided upon for grades 6th, 7th, and 8th?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Miss Oliver has her hand up.
I just wanted to add, Karen, to your question about professional development, and just to piggyback a little bit on what Dr.
Got to be on the mic.
said. Sorry, and thank you. I just wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Dr. Flaherty said, because I think it's so important for teachers to know that they're supported in whatever it is that we do. And I just wanted to add that although central office is saying there's a lot of professional development that they'll be implementing and a lot that they'll be doing to support teachers, Lauren and I have been doing a lot of work and talk at the building level about how we can best support teachers going forward. And our combined belief is if that we don't support teachers the proper way, then we're not putting students first, and that's our goal. So I just want to add that. Thank you.
So now we need a motion if
You
there's one.
Do you want to make it? Or? Okay. I'd like to make a motion that the CISL subcommittee, standing committee, makes a recommendation to approve the implementation of Wit and Wisdom for grades 5 to extend the ELA curriculum pilot for grades 6, 7, and 8 into the next year to make a formal decision then.
Second.
It's been a motion made and seconded. Ms. Abel, can you call the roll, please?
Sure, and we lost our student representative, so we just have our citizen representatives, Allison Driscoll,
Yes.
And Lorigan Sudak.
Yes.
And then we have our school committee representatives, Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
and Ms. Abel. That's 5-0.
And we do have just a couple slides, which I will move to the next meeting so I can give you an update on the elementary. You did hear some of it as we were going through this evening, but we'll tell you about a lot of our program successes, some of the challenges that we have and how they're being addressed, and what our next steps are, but I'll bring those up at the next meeting. I just do need one last vote from you this evening, which is on the time on learning requirement for Beverly Middle School. And I'd recommend that we classify Beverly Middle School as an elementary school requiring a minimum of 900 hours of time on learning.
So moved.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Abel, can you call a roll, please?
Sure. Allison Driscoll,
Yes.
Lorigan Sudak,
Yes.
Jeffrey Silva,
Yes.
Karen Robinson. Yes. Rachel Abel, yes. 5-0.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder, Showcase for Learning. You're gonna see this in every meeting. June 15th, 5:30 to 7.
Okay. Motion to adjourn? I make,
moved.
oh, yes. I'll make the motion. You
Second.
Okay. Same, Allison Driscoll,
Yes.
Lorigan Sudak,
Yes.
Jeffrey Silva,
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Rachel Abel, yes. 5-0.
good.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your patience as we wrapped up our Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life. It is 7:37 p.m., and I am pleased to call to order the Beverly School Committee. This is a regular school committee meeting today, Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. We also have some remote participation using a remote meeting application that allows for remote participants and public access during the open portions of our meeting. We are also being streamed and recorded by BevCam on their YouTube channel as well. So on June 16, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and then on February 12th and again on July 16th of 2022, he extended the provisions to, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023, and our now current governor and legislature have extended this an additional 2 years until March 31st, 2025. These acts specifically suspend the need for the quorum and chair to physically be present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow for safe public access. Just as a side note, Beverly also has prior approval for remote participation in its meetings, although through that permission, the chair and a quorum do physically need to be present once these acts and their extensions expire March 31st, 2025. Let's see. And I'm just realizing I sent the wrong version of the notes to you, Ms. Robinson, so I will update these notes again for our remote meetings. Joining us today are members of the school committee, various members of the district administration and leadership teams, and I will conduct a full roll call attendance in a moment just to make sure everyone can see and hear each other. I would ask that any audio or video that you supply becomes part of the meeting record, so the mute functionality if you're participating remotely is very important. Additionally, if you're here in person, these microphones are for BevCam's benefit, so make sure you're green when you are speaking. Let's now conduct the roll call vote. Participating remotely, we have Mayor Michael Cahill.
Hi, everybody here.
Great. Ms. Erin Brown.
Here.
Principal Amy Blanchard.
Here.
And then Dr. Churchick, myself, and BevCam are also showing in the remote meeting platform because we are presenting. In the room, we have Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Ms. Karen Robinson.
Here.
Dr. Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza. Ms. Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
And Ms. Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
Thank you. We have our Superintendent, Dr. Sue Churchick.
Here.
Our Executive Secretary, Donna Bergeron. Student Representative, Kaylee Quintigno.
Here.
We have Ms. Bethany Splansky.
Here.
Okay, Ms. Jean Sherburne.
Here.
Dr. Andre Morgan.
Here.
And Dr. Dorothy Flaherty.
Here.
Okay. I think that accounts for those present in the room. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. And I don't know, Ms. Visnick, if you've done it recently, but if you wouldn't mind leading us, we would appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Normally, we would recognize students, employees, and community members, but I believe some of that information is still being rolled out, so we'll save it for our next meeting. And now we will have a report from our student representative. The floor is yours.
So the month of April, we started off with the senior week where our seniors at Beverly High School just dressed up in different outfits each day, the most popular one being Toga Day, which was, I believe, Friday. And as we talked about a little bit in the beginning of our Student of Life Committee, the German and French trips are actually leaving today to visit. They partnered up and they will be visiting Germany and France, which is really great opportunity for many high school students. Along with many trips are going on during this time. The Spain trip will be leaving tomorrow as well, along with the band trip tomorrow morning. That's another great opportunity for everyone. And on April 6th, we had the NHS induction along with the NAHS induction, which is a great accomplishment for all those who were there. April vacation, of course, is going from just like the 20th week, like 20th week or so, on once we get back April 25th, which is Tuesday, I believe. There's SAT opportunities for juniors at the high school. So for juniors who do want to take SATs, they are welcome to do that. And along with, we did have a ceremony for Credit for Life, which will be happening on May 23rd, not in April, but we did have a ceremony on that, which is another great learning opportunity for high school students to learn more about like money and credit and how to manage their finances. This along with having a class at the high school, which high school students can take. Lots of trips, which is great. Vacations going on, and that's the month of April. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for that report. It sounds like a great time of year. Plus, the weather is warming up, and we're in our spring sports season as well. So, lots going on. As usual, if you have homework that you need to attend to, you are always welcome to stay at the table and enjoy our meeting, or you can get to work as well. Okay, we understand. Thank you. The next item on our agenda this evening is the approval of our meeting records from our regular meeting on the 8th of March. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Were there any edits or corrections that we needed to make to this meeting record? I'm not seeing any hands. Since we do have remote participation, I'll take a roll call. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel? The motion passes 7-0. Next is an opportunity for resident voice to provide input or comments on our agenda or non-agenda items. Ms. Bergeron, I don't believe we had anyone sign up. Is there anyone here to speak? Okay. Moving right along, our next is items by consensus. The warrants for items A, B, C, D, E, F, G are enumerated, and the amounts are listed on the agenda. Rather than try to read all those numbers, I am looking for a motion to approve this group of warrants.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
I didn't quite catch who. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. Okay. There's generally not any questions, but I'll look. Okay. I'll do another roll call vote. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel? Thank you all. Now, school committee chair updates. The first order of business before us this evening is actually to set our fall calendar, believe it or not. We are running out of dates on our spring calendar. Ms. Bergeron was kind enough to put together a schedule that reflects sort of the current way that we are stacking our meetings, so we commit to 2 fuller nights. We also have had our student advisory every other month. So we would be looking for a motion to approve this calendar or amend it at this point. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Is that Ms. Robinson? Okay. Are there any comments or questions on the schedule?
Really don't know what I'm doing next week, so it's kind of hard to it's hard to think about, oh my goodness, next fall. But I do appreciate the fact that it's been put together, and once it gets on the calendar for me, we're good to go. But it's hard to think that far. Like you said to our student rep, the weather's changing. It's nice. We got spring sports. It's really hard to think about the fall.
Right.
So.
Okay. I don't see any questions, comments, or amendments, so we have a motion on the table. I'll do a roll call. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes, 7-0. Going fast. Okay. April dates to remember. I have to just look at my cheat sheet here. Obviously, we're here tonight. We had CISL earlier. It's a regular school committee meeting. Tomorrow night is a policy subcommittee meeting. We also have negotiations meetings on Monday and Tuesday, the 24th, 25th. And then we will meet for our finance and facilities on the 26th of April. Because of the vacation week next week, we just pushed those meetings out. And we will have a committee of the whole on the 26th at 7:30. I do anticipate that we may need to schedule an executive session on that evening, just to mark your calendars. And then suddenly we're going to get into May. So that's just a quick look at our calendar for April. I will remind you, in May, we do have our public hearing for the budget. So make sure that your calendar has that noted as well, because it starts a little earlier than our normal schedule. For our joint council review, did have a little write-up to share. As you all know, on March 22nd, we were joined in the auditorium in this building with our honorable city council colleagues for our annual joint council. It is prescribed by our home rule charter that we meet with them annually. We had Dr. Chirocek and members of the cabinet and leadership team who informed us of the district's goals and progress against some of those goals, as well as a quick look at our FY24 preliminary budget, outlining a few of the concerns and opportunities that we have going forward. As per usual, BevCam was kind enough to record that session from the middle school auditorium, so the full presentation is available in case you missed it. If you're watching at home and you want to check that out, it's on the BevCam archives. We will obviously have some additional discussions tonight about the FY24 budget, so we're looking forward to that part of the presentation. And as I just mentioned, we do need to keep in mind that our public hearing for the FY24 budget will be on Wednesday, May 10th at 6 p.m., and we will be providing hybrid options that evening as well for the public. I have just one other order of business that I'll just take care of right now, and that is that I would like to appoint Ms. Bisnick to take the policy chair for the remainder of this term, and therefore lead tomorrow evening's meeting. That's it from the chair. So Dr. Chirocek, over to you.
Thank you very much, and I'm just going to make my screen a little accessible here. All right, so I have 3 items on the agenda for the superintendent's report tonight, 2 of which are voting items. The first is to take a look at school choice and our school choice numbers, and I need a vote to approve submission by May 1st to DESE as to what Beverly's doing around school choice. Gifts to schools around property that I'm going to present for a motion for acceptance by the school committee, and then finally an update on the FY24 budget. So first, to start with school choice, as you know, we're required to submit and specify the schools and grades in which seats will be available for non-resident students for the coming year. Ms. Bergeron provided all of you with let me just switch to, is that, oh, it is showing, okay, to the sort of the current parameters that we have in our school. Of note for the committee is the projected enrollments as of April 5th in that final column to the right, and those are our numbers to keep an eye on. If you go across, first of all, you'll see these are the slots that we had voted available in FY23, which is this school year, 10 grades K through 8 and 15 for grades 9 through 12. She's provided us with the current enrollments, utilizing those seats from non-resident students. In the next column, we have a projected, so these would be who's projected to be returning in those seats. If you recall, once a student is granted school choice, they remain a school choice student through grade 12. And then finally, how many seats are available in each grade level, and then how many requests we have had as of April 5th. I don't know if there's been a significant change in that, but the requests do begin to roll in at this time of year. We gather those requests, and then finally what our projected enrollment for each grade level is at that at each grade level. It's easy to envision the grades at the middle school and the high school. The enrollment is spread across the 5 elementary schools. School choice is not school specific. If someone applies for school choice, we assign them to a school that has available seats. So that's typically how that works. And so I'm looking to open the discussion and answer any questions from any of you around any of the seats. From my own recommendation as the superintendent, I would say maintaining the same number of seats per grade level right now would be probably the best course of action. If you take a look at our grades 1, grade 3, and grade 4, you're going to see some extremely high numbers in enrollment, 380 in each of those grades. That is, our typical enrollments have been running around 350 or 360. This school year had it rose about 20 to 25 seats during the course of the year. I think it's a sign of some of our school families that were homeschooling, returning back to school after the pandemic. So there have been some shifts. We've had some families move in. And so those are the numbers that we have. So that's why at this point, I would recommend not an increase in school choice, but maintaining the same level that we've been offering. So that's just sort of where I am. And so I would entertain any questions.
Dr. Silva.
I'm all set.
Ms. Bisnick?
For the sake of conversation, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the numbers as they were last year. So 10 in kindergarten through grade 8, 15 in grades 9 through 12.
Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Did you have a question or comment?
I don't think so.
Okay. Were there any questions or comments from other school committee members?
All right, I wish to raise my hand, though.
Okay, Ms. Visnick.
So, Dr. Churchick, as you just mentioned, the 3 really large grades. Let's just take first grade for next year's first grade. Because there are 9 current choice kindergarteners and we have to guarantee them a spot next year, we have to keep them until they graduate. That's our contract when we do this kind of thing. Then the most we could try to do to lower that class size would be to lower our school choice number from 10 down to 9.
Yes, because we only have one.
The best we could do.
Best we could do.
And okay, I just want to make that very clear. We're already at that number.
Yes.
We really can't do anything to affect that number.
Correct.
Or any of the other numbers other than like grades 9 and 10, really, realistically.
Correct.
I'll call on you, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm going to call on myself. I wish we could offer everyone the opportunity to attend Beverly Public Schools. I think it's a wonderful thing we're doing here. But as these numbers show, we no longer are graduating classes of 270. I think 300 is our new low count, and it's looking like we're edging towards that 400 size class. So we obviously need to serve our own students that are living here in Beverly, and unfortunately, I don't think that we can allow other community members that may wish to join us at this time. So I support the status quo, keeping the numbers 10 and 15. Ms. Visnick.
Can we revisit, i.e., can somebody who remembers, please remind me why there was a year recently that we didn't take kindergarteners? Wasn't there?
I think that was, no, I can't remind you. I do remember it. I think that was prior to my being a superintendent, and I think it was for concern about enrollments, that we had high enrollments and we were concerned about that. But when we opened them up the next year, they filled instantly. So kindergarten enrollment is really hard to judge right now. We thought we had low enrollment this year for kindergarten. We were probably at I think 320 as late as July 15th, and we ended up actually with 372 kindergartners this year. So it's just really hard to predict. Beverly is just a very desirable community, and I'm proud that our schools are desirable as well. And so, I don't think we have a handle exactly on the number of students. I think one of the conversations we have had around elementary is that because we have different size schools and different cohort numbers, we assign school choice students to where we have openings. So, for example, we might run 3 sections of first grade at Centerville one year and 4 sections at Hannah, and then it might actually flip. We don't know, and so filling 10 seats, we're not really adding to the cost or the budget, or we're not impacting class sizes tremendously because we have the ability to maneuver around that. So that's why the number 10 works, I think, in the elementary, because with 5 elementary schools, you can always find places to assign students that don't overload class sizes. And I think that might have fallen into the kindergarten conversation. Maybe perhaps we were switching to full day from half day, and we didn't know what that impact would look like. If when we went to free full day, we might have a larger draw, it might have been that. But again, I think that the 10 students across the whole district spread out in our 5 elementary schools is not really as much of a challenge. And the same when you look at the middle school, we have 7 teams in 5th grade, so you have plenty of options of moving students around and balancing the class sizes.
Thank you.
No other questions? I will call the roll. Mayor Cahill.
On microphone. Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. Thank you.
All right. The next item that I have is a request for gifts to schools under our policy for gifts to schools around property. We have been offered through the Beverly Rotary Club the purchase of a scoreboard to be located on our Beverly High School baseball field. If you've been to watch a baseball game lately, the placement of the scoreboard makes it a little challenging to be able to sort of follow the score. It's located further over on 40 Field, and so it's on the building, so it's hard to see. So the placement of this field is proposed. We had Mike Collins, Mr. Shiroli, and Mr. Keefe walk the field. They've selected a spot in right field that will make it accessible to the fans that are watching the game. This is sort of a facsimile of the board they've selected, and Rotary is donating this to the Beverly Public Schools. It will have a Rotary emblem on it, much like the other scoreboard that we actually already have, but it's not extensive advertising, which is one of the requirements of our policy. So I wanted to bring this forward, looking for a motion to accept this scoreboard as a gift and allow placement of it at the high school baseball field.
Ms. Visnick?
I wish to recuse myself from this vote.
Okay. Dr. Silva?
So what is the scoreboard that's affixed to the building used for?
I think it was originally designed to be used for the baseball field or for the JV soccer fields. I'm not really sure, but it's not accessible for the viewership to see from the field. It's challenging to see.
I think does it run on electricity, whereas newer scoreboards run on solar power? Is that part of the?
Well, I mean, it's a big.
I'll go with yes.
It's a large scoreboard. I'm just wondering why it was placed on the building as opposed to.
Again, that was done. I don't know how old it is either. I don't know how long it's been there. I don't know if it was when the building was renovated, but the field house is an original field house, so I'm not really sure. To be honest with you.
Okay. Ms. Robinson, did you have a question? Oh, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Sorry, I was saying as a member of Rotary, I probably have to recuse myself.
Okay. Still have a quorum. Are there any other questions, comments, or? Okay, I will.
Madam President?
Yeah, Mayor Cahill?
I'm a member of Rotary as well.
How come I'm not? What's going on?
Do we still have a quorum? Because I don't know if we need
Well,
to
so the
recuse
rule,
it.
yeah, we still have a quorum. The rule of necessity would allow you to vote, even though you're a member, but.
But it's not a voting issue. This is one of the policies that is in our packet. Because the policy says, I don't think it's a voting issue anyway, and doubly, just because of the policy, but in addition, because we already have that exact same scoreboard, it already says Rotary. It's almost like a relocation.
But I think it says I have to bring it forward to school committee. So I can accept a gift on behalf of this district from, under the gifts to schools, but I think we always bring
have to
gifts to.
tell us.
Well, I think just like the wall ball, it's of material value that's been gifted to us.
But you have a quorum with 4.
We have a quorum of 4. Okay. You're not on Rotary, right? Okay. I know. No, I got enough on my plate. Thank you. Okay. We have a motion.
Yeah, you have a motion in a second.
Well, you made a recommendation.
Oh, I made a recommendation.
You made a
sorry.
recommendation. So I will make a motion to accept with gratitude the scoreboard to be located near the baseball field for better visibility and offer our thanks, actually instruct the
Left field.
superintendent to offer our thanks to the Rotary who has purchased this.
Second.
Okay. Okay, and so for our voting members, we have Mayor Cahill is recusing himself. So abstaining, recusing. Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranz is recusing or abstaining. Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick is abstaining / recusing, and Ms. Abel, yes. So 4-0-3. With gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And so the final.
We have one more question. Mayor Cahill?
Yes, I just want to say, I wonder if we could ask Dr. Trochik to check with our attorney. It doesn't matter tonight because we had enough people, but I think it'd be great if we understood a little better,
Rule.
you know, what kind of go back and refresh ourselves. Maybe we don't need the outside attorney so much as just looking at the language
Here's
of
the
the.
rule of necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll circulate the rule of necessity for everyone to understand.
But even beyond that, because I don't know that we really needed to recuse ourselves in this instance. So
I
I'm
will
just
check
saying,
with Liz. I'll have Liz Valerio write us up something.
maybe we do a refresher because it'll make it easier the next
Happy to do
go
that.
around if we have a better sense.
Yep, I'll do that. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So in terms of the budget this evening, I have some updates for you. The process this year has been different, largely due to the election of the new governor. Everything is kind of pushed back. We were expecting the House to come out with their budget, I thought today, but I have not seen it yet. It may have come up. Last year it came out right when we were sitting here, I think. So what I want to do is walk you through just where we sit. And I also have brought forward tonight an update on our ESSER funding because we are required to report to DESE annually our ESSER expenditures, and we submitted that report, and so I want to share that with the committee tonight too, so you have some idea of what our ESSER funds, what we've been doing, and what our plans are. So, as I always do, start with our district goals, just keeping in mind that all budget decisions that we make really are aligned with and driven by the goals that we have as a district. And I wanted to talk about factors. So these are you've seen some of these factors already. Some of them are right in line with what we always look at every year, our contractual obligations. We are in the midst of our negotiations with AFSCME units. We are watching enrollment, to watch our enrollments to see if there's needed added sections in any of our areas. Our resourcing for high-quality curriculum materials. Again, we had a presentation earlier at the curriculum and instruction meeting. We are really moving forward to utilize the resourcing that we have available through ESSER around purchasing high-quality quality curriculum materials and upgrading our materials in all of our subject areas. We always consider department funding requests. We had this year special consideration around the OSD tuition rates and the increases that will cause for our special education. And then finally, I have a new added item. We met with the mayor and Bryant earlier this month, and we always check in and have conversations with Brian, and typically our discussions are around the idea that we need to keep our eye on health insurance increases or what percentage we should be thinking about. Our original budget was projected at a 3% increase, but we have been told, the mayor has engaged in conversations with the consultant for the city, and so we may be getting updated information that will cause us to increase our projections on health insurance. And I have a little more information about that as we go forward. Where we sit with OSD rates right now, this is the impact I had spoken to you about. So we do know that the governor included in her first budget $20 million and in a supplemental budget $70 million, which is very encouraging to think that there's possibly going to be relief for municipalities around those increases. We do not have any information as of today as to who will be eligible for it and how it will be distributed. So that remains on hold. The increase will be happening. It's just a matter of will there be resources, funding coming our way to alleviate that impact for us for the FY24 budget. So that is just sort of still on hold. And here is the information, our contractual obligations. Jean and I have been meeting daily, basically, for the last couple of weeks, but took a look once again today just to reassure ourselves that, our COLA, our steps, our lanes are in line with what we anticipated they would be. Our healthcare increase, if you remember, we originally came forward at $259,282. That is a 3% number. We had put a reminder in here earlier what a 5% number is. We usually look at that range. That's $432,136. I will say, and Mayor, I think you can echo, it's fair to say, we have been cautioned that it may be upwards to 10%. So we are keeping a close eye on it. There's a significant impact from the pandemic of people all of a sudden accessing healthcare that had put things on hold or whatever. We are waiting on that until we hear more from the mayor and Bryant. They are doing more work with our consultant, and we're not making a change until we hear from them and have some more guidance as to where we're going with that. But that's something that the city's watching, and he has his hand up, so I'm going to let him speak.
Go ahead, Mayor Cahill.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Madam President and Doctor. I think I can just give a little context is all. The way it was described to us by our outside healthcare consultant was a combination of things from COVID. One is that people put off things that they could put off and are having them done. And two, a lot of preventative care was not undergone by people. So some more, unexpected or health problems that people have also. And so this isn't just us. This is happening throughout, throughout business and throughout municipalities and other sectors. So it is challenging. Just want to give you that little bit of context as to how it's being explained to us.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. So that's just to keep in mind. Again, we're still working on our budget draft proposed worksheet, as Jean and I we put a lot of things in front of that final word. So we're looking and keeping an eye and making sure we're making adjustments as we go forward. This is the original draft budget worksheet that we had brought forward. We're not making any changes to this right now. We have not heard from the House yet to see if that Chapter 70 number is the number that's going to stay. And we're still waiting to hear on the OSD. And then we also need more information about health insurance. So that's where we are right now. We don't see any significant changes to any of the other parts of the budget that we brought forward. There are a couple of enrollment that we're watching, and yet we're confident that whatever enrollments they are, we can carry on ESSER for the FY24 budget because they may be temporary increases at certain grade levels or, something like that. So we don't have any significant changes to the original worksheet that I brought forward with the exception of the health insurance that I just showed you and the uncertainty around the OSD. So I just wanted to kind of share that with all of you. So here's where we are in the legislative process. We expect momentarily the House Ways and Means budget to come forward, followed by the Senate budget in May, and that will bring us our final Chapter 70 number by June of '23. Our next steps, again, is just to continue reviewing our funding sources, looking at one-time expenses that is particularly around that OSD increase. Additional retirement savings, we did review. We feel like we have a pretty good handle on retirements at this point. We think that we will capture about maybe $75,000 from retirement savings, which will help us in our final review of what we're looking at for the budget. And we're continuing to monitor enrollments, as I said, particularly. The major one is kindergarten. We're watching kindergarten to see what our kindergarten numbers look like and where we're at. One of the grade ones at Ayers is something that we're watching because she's getting a lot of people coming in that weren't in our kindergarten that are enrolling, are registering at this point in time. We'll be back on the 26th with some revised budget numbers and hopefully some more information on some of these areas that are still remain question marks for us. Before I go on to ESSER funding, are there any particular questions on anything that I...
Dr. Silva.
With regard to healthcare, if costs go up beyond what you are budgeting, what other considerations are taken to try to control costs there?
So at the school department level, we're really, relying upon the mayor and Bryant to come forward and tell us what those increases are. They would be working at the city level. We are part of the city insurance. And so I know that there's, they're going to be looking to figure out what they can do to ameliorate any kind of big increases. But for us, it would just be making sure we include it in our budget. That's really the step that we would take.
And Ms. Bisnick?
To be clear, because of our contracts, we could not change the percentage and say that those enrolled have to pay more.
Actually, I believe our contracts read that we follow the city, we work within the city offerings. Again, that's what I think, but I'm not an expert on that, so I have to check that one out.
So potentially there is we're getting out all of the books.
Yeah, I think that it reads, if you look under it, that we follow the municipal, whatever the municipal offerings.
Mr. Mayor, I see you've turned your camera back on. Could you potentially address the idea that if, in fact, the insurance comes through at some exorbitant increase,
So Jean-
whether...
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Jean has it.
So it is in all the agreements have language that we're part of the city's group. They had a health insurance group that met, all the unions met the teachers' unions, the police unions, and everything. This was before Mayor Cahill's time. And so if there's going to be any changes, they would have to make a change to that agreement. So they'd have to get, I believe they would have to, I'd say legal department would have to figure that out. But in each of our contracts, there's a little blurb that says it's part of the Beverly Health Insurance Group. But yes, we couldn't change it and we couldn't offer incentives without the city doing that.
Right. So, Mayor Cahill, the question on the table is whether, in some unforeseen circumstance, if the cost of insurance goes up so much, would there be a scenario where the city would say, we as a city can no longer have the, the cost sharing that's currently agreed upon, we need to change the ratio, right? So if it was, for instance, an 80-20, we need to go 75-25. Is that a possibility?
So, Madam President, I'm assuming you're waiting for me to talk. So I didn't put my hand up, isn't it? We're not there yet. There are a number of ways, a number of strategies that the healthcare consultant has flagged, and they're gathering more information. They've got, they're actually posing questions and gathering data from the provider, the healthcare providers who are, whose plans we carry and offer to our employees. so we're not there yet. You're referring to plan design, and the plan design, when the state reformed the healthcare law in 2012, that's when Ms. Sherburne's referring to. The city at that time sat down with the unions and did a plan redesign. So it's not out of the question, but we're not there yet.
Thank you.
And I probably also should say that if that were to be necessary, it would not be something that would be likely to be achievable or happen between now and end of fiscal year as we put this budget together. It would be more, if we need to go that route, it would be more something that would take a little bit longer than that to work through. And maybe something, again, if we all ended up feeling it was necessary, maybe something that could be planned for or hoped for to realize some savings later in the coming fiscal year or in the following fiscal year.
All right. All right. So I'm going to move on. So just in terms of ESSER funding, just a reminder, the ESSER funds came. Originally, there were 3 ESSER grants that we received, ESSERs 1, 2, and 3, to support the safe reopening of schools and sustaining safe operations while meeting academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs resulting from the pandemic. These 3 buckets were something that we presented to you a long time ago. There's a bucket missing because the one around safety and physical being of the buildings, and those were largely addressed in ESSER 1, and these buckets kind of came out with ESSER 2 and 3, but this is sort of how the Department of Ed has categorized how they look at spending and how they're collecting data around spending. We are required to report our spending to the Department of Ed on all 3 funds, and so tonight I'm going to share with you the information that we reported as of April 5th. And before I start, many kudos to Jean. I did give her some flowers, but even more kudos to Jean for putting all of this information together. This has been a really big lift, making sure that we were tracking and then organizing it into the actual way that we needed to report it. So we have a great system right now. We've been doing a great job tracking our expenditures. We have a very solid plan through the September 30th of 2024, at which time the funds expire, the final funds expire. So I'm just going to run through ESSER 1 probably really quickly because we expended all of our funds for ESSER 1 in the FY22 school year. And to be clear, what we were reporting this year were actual expenditures for FY22. That was what was due in April that we just submitted. But we also were required to submit proposed uses and how our proposed uses for the remainder of the funds. So ESSER 1, we had categorized, this is the budget page sort of, we utilized the $555,939 in this manner. We had $117,000 that we used on administrative salaries, $90,000 on instructional salaries, $216,000 on support salaries, $36,109 on stipends, $38,630 on health insurance and MTRS, and then $57,700 on supplies and materials, and then other costs, $500. These were numbers that we had presented quite a few times to FNF, so this is probably familiar to many of you that were part of those conversations. These monies were fully expended by June 30th of 2022, and all expenses were included in the through the FY22 year. The ESSER 2 grant that we received was for $2,119,947. This is funding that was available to us from FY22 through FY23. Again, we're reporting our expenditures for FY22. We had budgeted our original budget for administrative salaries, $217,000, of which we expended $98,728. We had budgeted $732,000 for instructional salaries. We've expended $409,866. We budgeted $154 for support staff salaries. You'll get these slides, so don't worry if you're worrying about seeing them. FY22, $112,857. Stipends, 144,000. In FY22, we utilized 75,891. And beneath each category, it sort of gives you a general description of what we use those funds for. Fringe benefits, 405,410. In FY22, we expended 68,328. There is a reason why that number is much lower than it feels like it should be based upon the salaries that we paid, and that's because we make our MTRS payment at the very end. And so that has not been made yet, but will be made. So that money will be utilized, it just isn't expended yet, so we couldn't report it. Contractual services, 84,000. We expended 54,275. Supplies, we had budgeted 303,537, and we've expended 111,993. And then finally, we had in travel, 20,000, we expended 7,000. And then in other costs, we had budgeted 60,000 and we had expended 13,610. So our total expenditures in FY22, remember that's last year, that we reported to DESE were 952,548. And that means that we have planned expenditures for FY23, remember we have to spend this entire grant by the end of FY23 of $167,399. So the final thing that we are asked to report is how did we utilize the money in those buckets? If you remember the conversation around the buckets, the three pictures of the three buckets. So in FY
That's how we're planning.
This is how we're planning on utilizing the remainder of our expenditures. We have 1% under addressing physical health and safety. That would really be a salary for a nurse. Meeting student academic, social, and emotional needs, excluding mental health. 89% of our funding is budgeted to go there. That is a huge category. We had a little bit of challenge. Pretty much everything we felt we were using our money for was meeting academic, social, and emotional needs. So that incorporates supplies, that incorporates curriculum, that incorporates salaries for both teachers, administrators, and staff, with the exception of school adjustment counselors, which fall under mental health. 9% at mental health and 1% for operational continuity. And I forget what that one was, but.
That is, would be the, if we were going to need, sorry, that's if we're going to be utilizing money just to continue operating. So maybe it would be something like a vehicle, or if it would be, not sure if, I think that's on the next
Yeah.
grant, but it would be if we had bus monitors to get the students safely to school.
So this is the report that we submitted for ESSER 2. And then we have the ESSER 3 grant. The ESSER 3 grant was for $4,741,978. And again, this grant was available from FY22 through FY24, but it's actually technically FY25 because we can expend the funds up until September 30th of 2024. These are so we had to submit our plan for how we would use it. You can see in this one, we did not use any funds in FY22 with the exception of, did it hit the MTRF?
The MTRS, when you write a federal grant, MTRS, whatever you budget, they send 80% of that budget amount directly to MTRS as a direct payment. So therefore, they did that in FY22. Then we'll pay the final amount when the grant is totally expended.
And understand, we strategized from the beginning to utilize all of ESSER 1 and then all of ESSER 2 and then go into ESSER 3. So the majority of the spending for ESSER 3 is in this current year and in next year. So for administrative salaries, we budgeted $154,452. We have to date, and remember FY23 is not over, but to date we have expended $102,033.
Dr. Strochek, I just want to clarify that is what we will be spending in FY23 when you're on the
when I'm in
on the
salaries,
salaries. When
right.
you're on the
So they're
supplies,
right.
it's different.
Do you understand? Does everybody understand what she just said? This is what we plan to spend in salaries, but if it's supplies and other things, then it's actuals. Instructional salaries, we budgeted $1,318,000, and in FY23 we have we intend to expend, is that a way to say, intend to expend $481,488. That's a combination of classroom teachers, the instructional coordinator, specialists, certified specialist teachers, nurses, counselors. By certified specialist teachers, that's some reading teachers, that's some interventionists that we have. That is the elementary librarian right now is considered a certified specialist under that category.
Dr. Strochek, I would just add to that, that it's not half of it, so people may be looking like, oh, you didn't spend half of it.
Right.
That's because ESSA 2 will be ending, that Grant 115 will be ending, so some of those positions will have to go on to ESSA 3. So that's why there's a variance that usually you're seeing it's about 50-50. This one, we're going to have to still move it, and then, of course, as our plan has always been, that then after, what do we need to keep in the district would have to go on the appropriated budget or be eliminated.
Okay. Support salaries, we have budgeted $205,000. In FY23, we anticipate $158,978 as our expended numbers. Sorry, I went too fast. Stipends, we had $215,000, and we have to date spent $51,349. That is curriculum development and implementation. As we talked about earlier in CISL, we will be having some professional development opportunities for some of our middle school teachers and some curriculum development work that will be done over the summer for the implementation of their new program. Fringe benefits, this is estimated, this goes through any salaries that we carry on our grants. We also carry the health insurance and the MTRS. So in FY22, this was the one expense that hit ESSER 3, $94,896. And in FY23, we anticipate $70,000, again, with a much larger amount hitting at the very end. Contractual services, $440,000. In FY23, we expended $80,940. And then supplies, $690,000. FY23, we actually expended $259,637. Again, this is where what we're utilizing for the purchase of our high-quality curriculum materials that we are in our curriculum review for. Other costs, $1,113,000. In FY23, we expended $669,122. That included network upgrades at our elementary schools. It included technology devices, hotspots for homes that we provided, as well as student summer and homeless transportation. And then finally, we still have in the budget, with a wishful thinking hope, around the purchase of a district transportation vehicle for $28,000. Our plan for that is to look at it as a something for use by our outreach counselors and for attendance purposes to kind of support getting students to school who may be having difficulty, and it may not be at a bus run time that we're getting them to come. So as we said, we reported total FY22 expenditures to DESE of $94,986. We anticipate and have expenditures to date on FY23 of $1,873,553, and additional planned expenditures are $2,773,529. And here is the breakdown of that. Addressing physical health and safety, 18%. Meeting students' academic, social, and emotional needs, excluding mental health, 66%. Mental health supports, 12%, and operational continuity, 4%. So I know that was a lot of numbers. I just wanted to share with you the kind of reporting that we're required to do to DESE and how we have been accounting for the grant monies that we have. And I'm happy to probably defer most questions to Jean. No, I'm only kidding. Answer any questions that you might have.
Do any committee members have questions? Ms. Bisnick?
I'm going to ask you to go back some slides. I think I want to see an ESSER 2 slide, not an ESSER 3 slide.
This is 2.
Okay, so in general, I heard Mr. Burns say something about the allocation in between the first number and then the actually intended expended number.
Yes.
A nice little rhyme there. I guess there are some of these numbers where, like just here, admin, we've spent way less than half. or a good portion, less than half. But on instructional salaries, we've expended way more than half.
So here's what she was referring to is because the grants are split between FY22 and FY23, and yet ESSER 3 runs 22, 23, and 24. We carried salaries in FY22 on ESSER 2. We are carrying some salaries in FY23 on ESSER 2 until they're gone, with the remainder going on to ESSER 3. And so therefore, in FY24, they're all going to be on ESSER 3. So this, say, $300,000 variance here gets moved to ESSER 3 in addition to the salaries that we anticipated that we're carrying in FY23. If you kind of like, we had carried over and then we carried over again, and so they catch up together. So about 1/3 is expended in ESSER 3 because the remaining 2/3 has to cover whatever bumped. Did that help?
So we need not be concerned that any given category is a very different percentage of already expended than any other category.
When we look at the expenditures in F&F, we say, oh, we should be at 72% right now. And 72, 72, 72. And if one's at 96, we go, whoa, or if one's at only 38. That does not apply here. That you can't use that same lens to look at how, because of the overlapping fiscal years of the 3 different grants. So that's exactly right.
Okay. I have another one, but I'll pause.
Go, Dr. McKenzie.
Hi there. I have a couple of quick questions. I hope they're quick. We had talked a little bit about our issues around subs, compensation, and recruitment. Does this capture our intention to be competitive in that space, or have we remained static on that one in particular?
So no, I think we reported out at the joint council, and I wish Mrs. Bra, she might be online, so she might be able to help me out. We did have a concerted effort around recruitment and development and diversity representation across our hiring. We have made an increase in that. So, and I don't know the numbers, but Erin, if you can join me, I'm not sure if you know off the top of your head or have information in front of you. I know we had a percentage of an increase that we had mentioned at joint council.
But specifically related to substitutes or hiring?
I think both. I think you talked A, substitutes, and B, diverse hiring.
No. I only said subs.
Oh, all right. I'm
sorry. We had a concern about recruiting subs and being competitive in pay compared to neighboring districts. That was particularly, difficult during the pandemic when we were having lots of people out.
So there's just been a recent group looking at different sub rates across different school districts, and we are very competitive with all of the surrounding communities. And in terms of recruitment, I'd say in the spring this year, we have been able to get quite a few more subs that have come through for us. So daily staffing in the last month or so has certainly been a lot better than it was during the winter months. So we've definitely have made improvements in that area, and being competitive has we've got quite a few people who are not substituting in other communities now to come to ours.
Perfect.
And to clarify, just so the building subs that we have on there also has helped, because we're utilizing those building subs to prevent the pulling of paras where we can, which was a practice that we had before. So yes, also included in the support staff salaries that where we have building subs, we have some people who just report every day. They're on a contract for the year, and we're no longer needing, well, I'm not saying we're no longer, we have to do a lot still, but we're reducing the number of times that we have to pull a paraprofessional to cover a classroom. It still happens, so I'm not going to try to gloss that one over, but we've been able to reduce that at some level.
No, that's really good news. I was just curious because I know that was really challenging, and it's always great to have more diversity in hiring, but in this particular instance, I knew that was a challenge to get that consistency. So thanks. I'll save my other question.
Okay, Ms. Visnick. All set. Ms. Visnick.
I want to know, relative to the percentages, the breakdown in between academics versus mental health supports. And so for an ESSER 2, I believe your mental health support number is 9%, and in ESSER 3, it's 12%. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't be making a more intentional effort to spend more money in that particular quote-unquote bucket.
So that was
That's not really a bucket on your
yes.
picture. in
So the
beginning, right?
challenge, yes, and so here's the problem is that direct mental health supports, it's hard to distinguish. So City Connects, for example, which was a huge investment that we made, falls under meeting academic, social, emotional needs, including so for our staffing that we added. That while I believe that's for mental health, in the categorization column that Department of Ed had, because it was a multi-tiered system of support, it wasn't a specific mental health, but a multi-tiered system of support. So depending on how we categorize things, it changes the formula. I think under mental health supports, we really were specifically looking at outreach counselors that we might have, I don't even know. So, like it was really kind of a little bit obscure when you were selecting the categories. We had sort of a grid and we had to decide. So some of the things that we believe were directed toward mental health supports fell into the academic category. The only constrictions of the grant that were laid out is that we had to spend a minimum of $10,000 on mental health supports as they categorize them, which we met. And then 20% of our funds had to be minimum of 20% in students' academic and social emotional needs, which we clearly, had met too. So it was a challenge sometimes categorizing some of the things that we did.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
I think we had similar kinds of questions. I was trying to actually find out what the distinction is with, say, social emotional support within the building in terms of curriculum, and whether we were talking about mental health in terms of therapeutic goals. I think there was another slide where it had like 66% on there, which is a little
This is
different.
ESSER 3 versus ESSER 2.
Right.
And remember, this
So that's a
isn't
big difference. So I'm just kind of wondering like what
so.
the distinctions are made.
I think it you want to jump in, Jean?
Sure.
Told you I'd defer.
What I'm going to say is that this is what we plan to spend the money on, not what we spent the money on. So that's one thing is they asked us how we spent our money, or they asked us how much money we spent, and then they get into what do you plan to spend it on. So the mental health is pretty much what I have in there is the school adjustment counselors, outreach counselors, that type of salaries. And that's one thing that I actually said to Dr. Strochek, that when we're doing this, it is kind of vague. They say mental health supports, direct, and they said when we did the meeting, academic, social, emotional, and they said excluding mental health. I might think that this is mental health, but maybe a business manager in another community may not. But we wanted to make sure that we met our needs, and we wanted to make sure we were consistent. In ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, it was the school adjustment counselors and outreach counselors, and anything that is directly mental health, that we could clearly say that is only mental health.
I think we were concerned to err on the side of calling something mental health and then have it not qualify, as opposed to calling it social emotional support. It was a broader category, so we felt a lot more things fit in there.
Ms. Visnick.
Honest, it's my last question.
That's okay.
I wonder about the hope to get a district vehicle and whether we would actually have a driver for said vehicle.
So that's the debate and conversation. So we've worked with transportation. Anyone who would drive students would need to have a 7D license. And so thinking about our outreach counselors, I know one of them actually has already attained a 7D license. I think that, and when we think about this vehicle, it's really about sort of providing some of those crisis supports around, needing to get a student to school or doing some of those things, home visits, if we're doing some home visits, being able to take that vehicle there to do that. And so, the conversation, the requirement would be that anyone that would drive the vehicle would have to have, if they were going to drive a student in it, they would have to have a 7D license. So that really is the only restriction. We're looking at a passenger vehicle, not a, maybe like a passenger van, but not a mini bus or type C bus or any of those things. So looking more at something like that.
Dr. Strowcheck, I would
Thank
just
you.
add to that is that it's not a normal everyday pickup. So we're not taking union work away from unions. So it's,
Right.
this would
It
be.
would be emergency,
one
more
offs.
emergency, so.
Looking around for any more questions? Okay, thank you, Dr.
All right,
Trocek.
thank you.
Returning to our agenda, we have committee reports. First up is our Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities. Ms. Visnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities last met on March 22nd. I do a overview and then we'll go to the actual motions that we're bringing forward as a group. We had a small gifts to school. We voted to accept DESE grant number 215 as well as 185 and an entitlement increase. We met the new Assistant Director of Finance and Operations, Stacy Bonsang. Okay. Yeah, Stacy. She gets one name, like Sting. We heard a proposal from our head of B&G to replace the grading out in this courtyard here at the middle school, due to weather. The grass that was planted there has eroded, and so he's looking at replacing that with turf. And so we just heard a proposal about that. We did not take a vote. We talked about quote unquote swapping two unfilled paras that were being funded through ESSER and two unfilled support substitutes for special education. And two of those, as I mentioned, are covered in ESSER and two are in our regular budget. And repurposing those four unfilled positions for four behavioral analyst assistants or behavior specialists. And these are one-year positions. They will be explicitly hired almost like a contracted services. They're not expected to be renewed. And then we got an update about the citywide munis, which is, we've talked about for a long time. Eventually, when the munis update is fully implemented, employees will be able to access things via a portal, and that will give them much joy. It'll give Jean much joy as well. So things like their pay stubs and their W-2s can be obtained by themselves instead of having to ask somebody in the district to do it. We are next meeting on April 26th at 6:30 p.m. So that said, the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities brings forward a recommendation to accept a gift to schools for the month of February in the amount of $23.42.
So moved.
Second.
I doubt there are any questions. I'll do a quick roll call. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
I have to look. I can't just look. Yeah. And Ms. Abel, yes. That's 7-0. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. The Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities brings forward with our recommendation a set of two DESE grants totaling $79,000. I don't think it's an even number, actually. We combined them in here. You have it in your packet. All right, I lied. It is $79,000. Number 215 for professional development for teachers around genocide, and number 185, which would also be professional development for recently purchased ELA materials, which were discussed in our CISL meeting earlier this evening. So a total amount of $79,000.
I'll make that motion. Oh,
Second.
no questions. I'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill.
Yes.
Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Ms. Visnick.
Yes.
And Ms. Abel. Yes. 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, our last item, the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends acceptance of an increase in some existing grants from DESE. The total amount, this is in your packet, the total amount is $8,785. Each of these grants we already are receiving. We're quote unquote just getting an increase in each and across 4 different categories. Those categories are itemized in your packet. And again, the total amount is $8,785.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, if there's no questions, I'll call the roll. For the grants, Mayor Cahill.
Yes.
Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Ms. Visnick.
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. Okay.
So no meetings next week because of school vacation. We next meet on Wednesday, April 26th at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you so much. Ms. Robinson, if you would give us a report out from the Standing Committee on Curriculum, Instruction, and Student Life.
Yes, thank you. So the Curriculum, Instruction, and Student Life Subcommittee met this evening, and we heard about some big trips happening at Beverly Middle School. Their first ever trip for middle school students to go to Puerto Rico is happening over April vacation. Half of the 6th grade is now back at Nature's Classroom for the first time since 2019. And I believe the music department is also traveling to New York City. Is that correct? They didn't talk about that, but that was, I heard that as well. So our Director of Humanities, Paul Casey, spoke about the realignment of the English department, both vertically and horizontally, to bring more cultures and experiences into the classroom. The English teachers work very hard to bring in 14 new texts over 4 years, not 14 new texts over the 4 years at the high school, with the goal of better representing the changing faces of the students at the high school. In addition to diversifying the text, the English and Social Studies departments are working hard to align text between those 2 departments whenever possible. And over at Beverly Middle School, the English teachers and the ELA teachers and the district team presented their findings from their pilot program, and the Curriculum and Instruction Committee voted to bring forth to the larger school committee the recommendation to adopt Wit and Wisdom at the 5th grade level and to continue to search for a knowledge-based literacy program for grades 6 through 8. Principal Lisa Oliver and literacy coach Lauren Oxford, along with Dr. Chirocek and Dr. Flaherty, committed to providing release time and paid professional development to teachers for all the work that goes into curriculum restructuring. And I believe our next meeting is the curriculum instruction. It said June on the list, but I think it's in May. May 12th, and then we will be hosting the Showcase of Learning at Beverly High School this year on June 15th.
So it's May 10th and then
May 10th. Yeah. I think that was pretty much summarized it.
Thank you so much. And we will see those actions at our Committee of the Whole meeting on the 26th of April for the curriculum adoptions. For the negotiating subcommittee, I will report out that we have met with all three AFSCME bargaining units on March 24th, April 4th, 10th, and 11th. And we, as I reported out earlier, will meet on the 24th and 25th. So I will put an executive session on our next Committee of the Whole on the 26th in hopes that we can use it. And just as a reminder, when we are bargaining, we actually take all of our votes in open session. So we would have an executive session with a return to open session. So we'll plan accordingly. I think that's it for negotiations at this point in time. And next, Ms. Visnick, anything you want to report in advance of tomorrow's meeting?
It's going to be thrilling. We have a set of policies that, am I allowed to foreshadow, yes?
You can prepare the committee for the work ahead, yes.
Okay, so we have a policy that says we will review all of our policies every 5 years, and it's been almost 5 years since we brought the entire packet forward. And due to COVID and some changes in this committee, we have not been doing our regular rotations and reviews. And so at the risk of breaking our own policy about reviewing all the policies every 5 years, the goal of the policy committee is to bring again the whole packet forward. And for those of us who have been on the committee, those 5 years, we'll just bring well, you'll get the whole packet, but you'll also get a highlight of what has changed. So we have a handful of policies, so you won't have to review the whole thing. You just have to look at the diffs, the differences in between the old and the new, and there's a relatively small handful of those. And well, we anticipate that there will be a small handful of those, and included, the bulk of those are around the fact that there's a much larger class of protections. So, for instance, we know that we do not discriminate based on age or race, and now the definitions of other things that we do not discriminate on has grown. So the bulk of the changes in these policies are around expanding that definition of protected class. So we'll hopefully be able to fly through a whole bunch of those tomorrow night. Like I said, there's a handful, I should say, like 9 of them. And then this committee of the whole will get that whole packet for review, so that then we can get back on our regular schedule. And I wish to give some explicit shout outs. Donna has been incredibly instrumental in finding the institutional knowledge in some of the meeting minutes that we needed to kind of remember where we were and what version of a given policy we were on. And Ms. Abel, your master spreadsheet has been very instrumental, and I think it'll be very instrumental moving forward so that we can look at it. Anybody who's an Excel nerd, you'll probably get excited looking at this Excel. Has all our policies in it, and they've been designated to the various subcommittees or not. In some cases, the policies just need to come to all of us, but a lot of times a policy will go into a specific subcommittee first for review and then come back out to the committee of the whole. So a ton of kind of baseline work had to be done, and that has been done in that massive Excel. And so that has also been incredibly helpful. And then last but not least, a chunk of them are all about finances. And so my friends in the administrative team got a handful of policies dumped on their laps at the end of last week while I was at a baseball game, and said, what do we want to do with these? Because it's really those particular policies were really much more designated for our administrators to decide. Do we go with the MSC suggested updates, or do we kind of hang out with our own? And maybe we're hanging out with our own because of our charter. So like I said, we'll be voting on tomorrow night at 5:30. 5:30, we'll be voting on 9 or 10 policies, and then that, in the whole big packet will come to this group for approval for a first reading and a second reading, and then hopefully a vote before the end of the year.
Thank you, and thank you for adding that point. One of our policies is that we have a first reading and then a second reading, so it's not going to all happen at our next meeting. Dr. Kennan McKenzie.
I wanted to thank you, Ms. Visnick. And so I think, to be transparent and clear, my name is on the agenda for policy chair, but I did request to change that as we realized the learning curve that would be required to suddenly come up to speed on 5 years of policy review and updates. And so I do appreciate that you responded to my acknowledgement that I don't want to hold up this work with what I need to learn how to do. I'm happy to stay on the policy committee, and I'm hoping that at some point I will be able to maybe take a more of a leadership role once we're sort of have our ducks in a row and our house in order a little better. But I think for the sake of efficiency and moving the work forward quickly without a huge learning curve, it makes sense to put that with those who have a bit more historical knowledge. So I just want to acknowledge that you are chairing 2 committees, which is a lot of work, which you do kindly. But we're going to be here supporting you and rolling up our sleeves. But we carefully, realize we're in a pretty tight spot here to be compliant, and that's more important. So I just want to thank you for that.
I appreciate that, and trust me, the baton is hot, is coming back.
Yes, thanks. I mean, that's one thing we can appreciate. I think we each, do what we can to help each other out to make what teamwork makes the dream work. So thank you. Okay. The last item on our agenda is an opportunity for school committee members to bring forward any communications that they have. Ms. Visnick.
Oh, Ms. Robinson, I saw your hand.
Microphone.
May I defer to Ms.
Sure.
Robinson?
Ms. Robinson, you may go first.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. I just wanted to, so as we've been outside on the fields, I've heard a lot of talk about where are the stands in the fields. So just people really just want the stands out there. If they could be kept out there. What's that? No. They've come out and then they've gone back, but can they not? I guess people are wondering why they can't stay there.
I will pass that question. Sorry, I will pass that question along. I know we in the fall looked at it and managed to get a couple of sets of the stands out there. So I will double check. I know that Mr. Keefe, I don't know if any of you know it, but he was at the ROTC Educators Leadership program down, and they actually interviewed him on TV, so it was really kind of interesting. But he was away last week, so I will double check with him, and I know he and I had that conversation, so I'll follow up with that.
I think they're in the edge of the parking lot near the ball wall. They're sitting there on the corner of the lot.
Yes, and so the custodians need to bring them out, so I will work on that. I'll double check on that one.
Okay, Ms. Visnick?
I have 3 items. One is that I've heard it, and it's the coolest thing, everybody talking about Nature's Classroom, and, after having our little break and not going for a couple of years, and it's cute. I can say that now that my children are over, because any given parent is like so ecstatic about it, but then they're like, hey, I turned around to talk to my kid and they weren't there, and so I'm missing my child. So it's just nice to hear. I have a communication from somebody asking about why do we charge to get into some sporting events and not others. And the fact that specifically basketball, we pay for a ticket taker to be there. And so there was a question around, are we actually making any money after we pay the ticket taker? And so in my brain, I said, I'll talk to my friend, Miss Sherburne, and we'll put that on a future F&F meeting. So now I'm saying that out loud, and maybe we can put that on a future agenda. And last but not least, I received a communication, which I believe Ms. Abel and Dr. Trocheck and Ms. Taylor received as well, what to do to honor a child who would be graduating if he were still alive. So I don't think have a policy about that, and maybe we should, and or maybe we'll just have a procedure. And I know that Ms. Taylor is leaving, but unfortunately, this year won't be the only time that we need to think about this, and that's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, you're right. I did also receive that, and I think that is something that we'll need to consider how we honor, the students that aren't walking across the stage. I had 2 items I just wanted to put forward. One is actually my own personal observation of a lot of horseplay and jaywalking from our middle and high school students, and I would ask anyone watching at home or anyone in the sphere of influence of our walkers to discourage football games across Cabot Street and to look left and right and to be present when they are walking, whether it's the noise-canceling earbuds that are in the ears or just the exuberance of a beautiful spring day. I do not want to witness any accidents, and I don't think any of us want anything bad to happen to our students. So a little extra care and caution, a little less jaywalking, and a little less horseplay. And then the other comment, continue about dogs on campus and people using our tennis courts as an off-leash dog park. And using our turf fields as a play space. I think that signs have gone up. They have been noticed and maybe actively disregarded. And so a request would be to our community to understand that the city of Beverly has a policy against dogs on playgrounds and on schoolyards. And even the best behaved dogs, and I'm a dog owner myself, really don't have a place on our playgrounds and our play fields and structures. So a request on behalf of the constituents that have expressed concern, and then my own observations as well, as we just need to recognize we do have a dog park. We do have other places where dogs are welcome, and just not at our school, especially around our students and our athletes. Thanks. Okay. Don't see any other hands, so I am looking for a motion to adjourn this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Only because she's sitting closer, Ms. Robinson. I think I heard that one. Roll call vote. Mayor Cahill.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Ms. Visnick.
Yes.
Ms. Avila, yes. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, BevCam. And thank you all at home.